Hello and welcome to the Endurance Performance Open Learning Show. I'm your host Ron George, and I'm a athlete and coach in the sport of cycling as well as running. And you will have watched some of our previous videos where we talked to um, movers and shakers in the Indian sporting scene, endurance sporting scene, whether it be triathlon or cycling or running. And we are continuing to do these shows. We had an interesting discussion earlier today about virtual riding and using Zwift as a way to do virtual races. And it was a very interesting discussion. We had a good panel in the audience. Some of the top Indian racers who are using Zwift at the moment to to do their training and racing. And unfortunately, we weren't able to capture the audio from that recording. So I'm kind of making a video here to just quickly rehash and recap some of the things that we discussed. So for starters, I'm not going to talk so much about Swift. We know that it is at the moment the top platform that offers a virtual ecosystem to do your virtual riding and racing. They not only have training plans and a very, lots of structured workouts and for you to follow, but they also have they host um, a number of races every day, which I think it's the frequency of each race is around within 5 minutes. So if you wanted, you can jump into a race anytime any moment you want it. So the amount of flexibility it offers is ridiculous. You can race at any moment, at whatever time is convenient for you. How to do Zwifting? I don't want to go into this, but if you want to get started, then I would recommend you follow some of the websites and YouTube channels of people like DC Rainmaker or um, GP Llama, for that matter. These guys are performing. Um, they're doing quite a lot of good videos and offering tips and tricks on how to use Zwift. So I would refer you to them. My main concern for this webinar is really exploring the ecosystem of Zwift in a little bit more detail. So I don't know how many of you know that Zwift has a sort of a sister website they own called Zwift Power, which is a huge data repository of all your data from all your past races, and it shows you all the way, the numbers behind your progression, shows you how your weight and height and heart rates and all that has varied. So this is a great way to track your own performance. So here's one for my own racing. Earlier this year, when I started in April, I was using a dumb trainer, and you can see I was hardly able to manage 2.6 watt per kilo for some of those races. And in about 6-7 months time, come November, now I'm able to hold about 3.3 watt per kilo for a 20-minute average. And I mean, these are not super great compared to really strong riders, but for me, you can clearly see the improvement that I've had. Some of it having to do with the change in trainer, but a lot of it has to do with the adaptation that I've had, and some as I got accustomed to the virtual mode of racing and became more familiar with things, my numbers started to improve as well. Zwift Power is just a great tool for those who are already familiar with usage of power and power data and analyzing of power data. So here's one tab which says, shows you your power duration curve. You can look at it with respect to different windows. You can look at it from the last 90 days perspective, and shows you your power from about 1 second all the way to 2 hours. So you can kind of guesstimate what your critical power might be. For me, I think it's somewhere about 203 watts, something like that. And if you weren't interested in the last 90 days and wanted to look at something more representative, you can look at the last 30 days. which might be closer to your recent level of fitness. On the right side, you have bar graphs showing you all the power epochs, everything from 5 seconds to 20 minutes. And by individually clicking on these, you can see in which epoch you made more improvements, relatively speaking. So maybe you can see my 5-second improvements and 15 seconds improvements have quite a lot percentage wise compared to longer duration efforts. Um, because that might be because longer duration efforts are more towards the steady state side of things, and it's not easy to improve on the steady state, whereas you can make big improvements in your sprint by knowing when to sprint and knowing the mechanics of sprinting. Neuromuscular improvements in sprinting are obtained quickly. I think at least relatively speaking, in 4 or 5 weeks time you can uh, put on a decent sprint. But for some of these longer duration efforts, it takes a lot of aerobic development to get up there. And then there's various other things that um, you can do with the Zwift Power. So one feature I like is events. You can see all the events that are going to be held. Um, you can filter it by the map. Specifically, if you're looking for a certain map and specific distance, you can see what when those races will be held. For example, if you like France and if you like going long, you can see that today um, there's a 120-kilometer ride or race. I don't know what this is. It looks like it's a social event, but then if you only wanted to look at races, um, then you can do that as well. So look at the 60-kilometer race here happening today, and there's one tomorrow as well. So this is amazing. I think what this gives you is the ability to not only race whenever you want it, but also race with different segments of people. So in traditional training and racing, what happens? You're mostly associating with people in your neighborhood or in your locality, right? Or maybe at the sort of a regional level, your regional class athletes. Um, unless you're someone who really lives in an international setting and you have a wide multicultural expat community, like in Dubai, for example. In events here, you see people from pretty much all around the world. But Zwift offers a very easy way to get into that multicultural aspect. So, um, with regard to different time zones, you can enter into any time zone you wanted, and you could race with Japanese, you could race with Australians, you could race against Canadians, and kind of, it's really test where you are with these different population segments. So I think that's really an amazing way to look at things, especially if you wanted to see how well you're doing with someone else. And we know that there are certain countries that are traditionally very, very good in the sport of cycling, and it's mostly the European countries. And now it's also places like Australia and the UK. Um, but yeah, this is a great way to ride with people from those countries. And if your motto is to get fit and improve and ride with people who are much more tougher than you, then this is the perfect platform for that. One amazing feature about Zwift Power is the ability to filter by rankings in a specific event. So um, so if I hit rankings, um, it will show you which events are highly ranked in in terms of the people who have signed up. If there's a very high quality field, then the rankings are going to be high, and consequently, if you take part in those events which are highly ranked, then you have a chance to score more Zwift points, which in turn affects your ranking on Zwift. By the way, everyone has a ranking. Just to let you know, for example, my ranking is about 4,144 points, and overall in the world, and I'm at about 4,299th um, in the world. So that's shows you how big of a pool this is. Um, but uh, but yeah, that I like that because obviously it gives you one more tool to really narrow down your events. Um, it's kind of like the traditional way, you select races. You obviously want to, you don't want too easy of events to participate, and you want to be pushed, you want to be challenged. And I think this the rankings feature is really good in that respect. Really gives you the ability to narrow down those events of interest. You can call it maybe A events. Say you wanted to ride maybe a couple of days from now in a really high class field, then you can do that through through the rankings feature. So that's amazing. Um, so Zwift is using Zwift Power in a really good way to clamp down on cheating. Cheating, when I say cheating, it's either intentional or unintentional. They're they've gotten a lot of complaints from people who feel that their uh, experience is hampered by people who are trying to game the system, and it's really sad that there are people like that who who want to game the system, because ultimately for most of us amateur users of this platform, there's really nothing to be gained in any of these races. All of them are free at our level. If you look at the professional side, okay, the stakes are a little higher, and there Zwift is not only using Zwift Power but also the full legal arm of the of things to clamp down on cheating. So they have this cycling esports rules and regulations handbook, which is on Zwift's website, and it's about 15 pages long. And you can see that Zwift, they have an esports commission, um, which is responsible for maintaining, implementing, and communicating this rule set. And they also have a Swift verification, performance verification board. So just for starters, at the very highest levels, if you're a professional athlete, you are requested by Zwift, or mandated rather by Zwift, um, to use a second power source to record and verify um, your primary source of power. So say you're riding a smart trainer, and that is your primary source of power for Zwift to simulate your performance, then they require you to secondarily have another power source that's broadcasting to um, a bar mounted cyclocomputer, for example, and they will ask that data from you and will ask you to supply that data in order for you to take part in these events. So in the event that the powers from those two sources don't match up, instantaneous powers don't match up, then it gives room for them to start this extra level of verification process, and that's shown here in the flowchart. So it's really up to the discretion of the board how they, what they consider as a genuine um, act of wanting to, cause disrepute or game the system, or reverse engineer things. So it's really the Zwift board. But one thing to understand is recently Zwift has been coming down heavy with the rule book and enforcing it at the highest levels. So we have seen sanctions in a couple of riders recently, and that was on the news. Um, at the very least, you can have maybe a 6 month ban from using the software, or using the software to race. And at the worst case, you can have a complete ban from using the software at all. So so just watch out that there is a commission and a board that is overseeing this to try and enforce this. But I think for the majority of us, it does not affect us really, because this is only a concern for top level racers. Um, but it's still nice to read this rule book and kind of follow the basic intent, and the basic intent being, you know you want to make sure that when you use a platform such as Zwift, that's widely used by a lot of people to race, and people who are really interested in improving and performing and racing others. You want to make sure that you use the software correctly, and fundamental in that is entering the right parameters, your weight, your height. They should be representative of the actual you. So um, I think the UCI says that your weight shouldn't be fluctuating by more than 5% or something like that within a certain span of time. So all these sort of red signals, you know, widely fluctuating weights, for example, all these are red signals, red herrings, that then allows Zwift to really check into what you're all about, and hand you the red card if they feel that it's in their best interest to do so. Um, so that's the fundamental thing. Most people don't, I think, can get caught up in this. New users, at least, new users who think that they can use one subscription for multiple users and use, you know, the same weight for all. For example, you guys are going to fall into trouble. That kind of sharing scheme is probably discouraged by Zwift. So you want to make sure that the parameters you enter are representative to the person actually using it. I think Zwift is also very particular about you not um, impersonating another person. Yeah. So you want to make sure the profile that you've created is the actual you, and not, you're not stealing someone else's profile. I think that they can come down heavy on any attempts to use someone else's account, uh, either by hacking or some other uh, probably you know uh, legitimate use, but I don't think Zwift sees that really well. So it's good to read the rule book, and just make sure that you're using the platform correctly. And I think half your battle is then won already if you read the rule book. Um, Within the Zwift races, there are categories of races. So in for example, in the US system, you have different cats. You start at cat D and work your way to cat A, and if you're really good, um, then you go from cat A to being a pro domestic rider, and then from there the cream of the crop becomes domestic pro and international pro and so on. Zwift is kind of like that. You start as a cat D and work your way up to cat C, cat B, cat A. I think category, there's one more category above category A, and that's it. I think that it stops after that. But the basis for advancing you among these categories is mainly your 20-minute power. So if 95% of your 20-minute power hits a certain threshold, and you are also producing a certain threshold in wattage, then uh, you will be asked to upgrade. And if you don't upgrade and you're still racing among the lower ranks, then that will be seen as an attempt to sandbag. Basically, you're more powerful than you say you are, and you're trying to sandbag the race. So this table here on Zwift Power shows those thresholds for that basis. So, for example, if you want to be a C class rider, you need to be hitting 2.5 watt per kilo average, um, and also 150 watts. And now this is the average of the best 3 races in the last 90 days. Keep in mind. So if you're continuously hitting these thresholds, then you can upgrade. And if you don't upgrade, then your race performances will have some kind of flag. Like mostly it'll be like UPG, meaning upgrade, and you may not even be um, your race performances maybe will not be honored simply because you were sandbagging and you didn't upgrade and you were racing in a lower ranking. You can see at the top A plus level, the guys were the people, even females, who are riding are able to hold 4.6 watt per kilo and about 300 watts in FTP. So um, So that's the main usage of that is for entering into events. So for example, let's say you wanted to take part in a criterium race today, then you go into that event and you click on join event, and then you would specifically sign up in your category. And it's okay to sign up in one category above you, but you don't want to be a category lower, because you know I guess it depends on what you really want to do. You might be someone who's feeling a little tired one day, and feel like you want a little bit of extra racing, but you don't want to go all out, and you just want a fast group ride, and so you want to sign up in the lower ranks and maybe sit on someone's wheel, which I think is fine. But it's not fine if you're gonna sit on that guy's wheel and then last 200 meters just gonna take out your entire full force and win the race, because that'll be seen as an attempt to sandbag, and that's not good. So the whole concept of Zwift is this whole civic responsibility of being nice to people, and racing in a nice way. That's the the end all of it, really, in a nutshell. And those who are not nice really get penalized. um, so if you're a nice person in general, then you will use the system in a nice way automatically, and you will enjoy most of what Zwift has to offer. Having said that, now we come to the topic of indoor versus outdoor riding and the differences between both. Um, I think it's commonly understood that indoor riding is a little harder and your intensities are higher, simply because you're cramming a lot of work into a short space of time, span of time, and you also are in a um, more constrained environment without much cooling, etc. And in that respect, yes, there can be some impacts on performance, although studies have not really found a huge impact. Um, in fact, one study I saw very recently, and let's take a look at it. Um, so I think only a 1.9 or 2% performance decrement in indoor riding um, versus outdoor. So let's see where that is. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think this was a 20-kilometer time trial. The title of the paper is Effects of Fan Cooling at Room Temperature on Indoor 20-kilometer Cycling Time Trial Performance. And somewhere at the bottom, in the body of the paper, yeah, there you go. So there was a control condition and then a low speed and high speed fan condition. And you can see that, average power output for that test between the low speed and the high speed fan was not really that great. But it depends on who you are. If you are someone at the really high levels, then that tiny performance improvement with the high speed fan might might really benefit you. So you know you got to use it depending on how you're performing, and if you're really someone who is at the highest levels putting out a lot of power, then make sure you understand that at least 70-75% of that power is wasted as heat, dissipated either by body perspiration um, or evaporative cooling or something like that. And so if you don't have the right cooling, then there might be some performance decrements. Certainly, I think more than the heat is the humidity. And so let's say that you have a great fan, but it's so humid in the room. The fan, all it's going to do is keep blowing humid air around, and so it's you can argue how much is it really contributing to evaporative cooling, and I don't think it's doing a lot. Versus being in a cooler room, much lesser humidity, and then when the fan is cranking, it's really doing its job. So you're going to make sure that the room that you are using Zwift in is conducive to racing. It shouldn't be so cramped and dusty and without any ventilation. Um, regardless of whether you use a fan or not, I would still have a window, um, so a source of fresh air to let in fresh air. If you live in a cold environment, for example, then uh, I think it's nice to not depend on the indoor heating, natural gas indoor heating as much. You can turn the heating off and just simply open the window, and you can get let in some cool wintry air, which is actually quite fresh, wintry air into the room. Uh, Unfortunately, those living in hot conditions are stuck. They have to either close the window and switch on the air condition, and also need a fan at the side, or maybe two fans, one blowing at them and another blowing at the trainer, because I mean the trainer is also a source of heat. If you care about the longevity of your device, then you have to cool that as well. Heat can be the enemy of some of these devices. We have seen failures with bearings and things in the Tax Neo. So we've seen belt failures, for example. So heat and loads can affect the trainers and how long they last. So you got to be, a little mindful of that. It's not just you, but also you have to care for the device you're using. Um, so in a nutshell, use of a fan in an indoor setting, it is absolutely recommended. But again, it depends on what your goal is. If you're someone who wants to train specifically for the outdoor heat, then maybe you can incorporate short workouts where you're not depending so much on a fan, and so you can get accustomed to the heat, or working uh, under hot conditions. Um, there was another paper that discussed physiological and psychological responses to outdoor versus laboratory cycling, and this was a paper written, I think, in 2014 in the National Strength and Conditioning Association journal. Um, and they found that the power output and heart rate were higher during outdoor cycling trial, okay, than the laboratory cycling trial, despite no differences in perceived exertion. Um, so that might be just indicating that the when you do lab or maybe indoor based training, not racing training, your power outputs are more or less more steady. Whereas when you go outdoors, because of wind and changing wind conditions and your differing levels of terrain and grade and things like that, you are um, forced to put out power that's more stochastic in nature, so more unsteady. And indeed, that's confirmed by another study. Um, it's titled "An Analysis of Variability in Power Output During Indoor and Outdoor Cycling Time Trials," and these guys found out that, you see, look at this. So this is the raw data from outdoor riding, and it's more stochastic versus indoor, which is a bit more, much more steady. So again, this is the real riding and racing situation, and this is the indoor training situation. So if you train like this for a condition that's like this, then you have to question, is it really getting specific? But I think some of this is this paper is actually only looking at indoor uh, steady state uh, training. Um, I don't think they're looking at indoor racing as Zwift offers. I think that some of these differences are ironed out when you look at the indoor races Zwift has to offer. For example, criteriums can be just like this, where you're having to dig in every, I don't know, 10 20 seconds to either catch up or bridge gaps, or make an attack or something. Um, so you know if you look at like for like, apples to apples comparison, if you make an apples to apples comparison, I suspect that some of these differences will be ironed out. But if you're looking at purely training, then you're going to look at some kind of this kind of a difference, and so you got to question, is this something really you want? That's why I would say indoor riding and training should be a supplement only to outdoor racing and outdoor training. Um, but on average, how much proportion of indoor versus outdoor you use in a given week is really up to you, and what your goals are, and maybe what your coach thinks you should do. So um, that's um, that's really left up to the individual. But in a nutshell, there is no uh, doubt of the fact that a fan will help you. Heat dissipation is a big uh, topic. The nice thing about training indoors is you can race without your top jersey on, and so it offers more room for cooling. And there's also no question that there are differences um, in the kind of power variation indoor to outdoor, despite there being no difference in perceived exertion. Um, i.e., for a given perceived exertion, you can see differences in power output, stochastic versus more steady power outputs. Um, of course, the gorilla in the room is, if you're doing outdoor racing, then, you've got situations like high-speed cycling cornering in a cycling crit. It's stuff like this, which you can't really simulate in a in a Zwift training environment. So if you're a crit racer and you have to do this, 30, 40 times in a race of 1 hour, you got to question, will Zwift give you that ability? And I would argue not. In fact, as a crit racer, I think your best way to train for something like this is go use a abandoned parking lot and having four corners and keep practicing jumps and accelerations out of every corner, and that would be the best kind of training for a crit. Zwift crits, on the other hand, obviously there's no bike handling involved. You're simply sitting on the saddle, and you're using cadence and gearing to manipulate, um, you know, how you bridge up gaps, or it 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 still requires a degree of skill. Most people overlook the fact that, oh yeah, Zwift is all virtual and it's easy. You just sit on the saddle and you go, but it's not actually. When you look at the races, um, those races demand skill, and skill comes from neurological input from brain firing the leg muscles. You still have to use skill to manipulate your cadence, or your gearing, your power, to really make benefit of draft in cycling in the virtual races, um, to bridge up the gaps, to make an attack. You still have to. So that's why I say that neurologically, I think uh, Zwift doesn't take away all of those elements. Neurologically speaking, I think some of that is still there, some of that is still retained. You still have to use those skills. But bike handling wise, absolutely not. Zwift doesn't give you any bike handling skills, or maybe arguably some, if you were to perhaps, for example, do sprinting, and if your trainer were on a motion platform, then okay, I can, you can say you can use a little bit of the swaying motion to help you with the sprinting. But then again, does it really sway as in real life? I don't really think so. So bike handling wise, there's no question that outdoor riding is the most specific type of training. And so the concern from many coaches is, should Zwift be used by maybe a youngster who has no uh, skills with bike handling? And I would say no. I think they should ride more outdoors, and they should practice more outdoors, and also get comfortable riding with other people. They should really learn the basics outdoors, instead of getting spoiled with the indoor, because yeah, there's a lot of things that's left to be desired in the indoor with the indoor environment. Same goes for anyone who's new into cycling, who doesn't have the skills of an experienced racer. They really need to supplement uh, more outdoor riding in their training, and maybe use a little part on Zwift, for example, when they're not able to get out, or maybe the conditions outside doesn't favor outside riding. Um, on the other hand, for someone who's already has a lot of experience under their belt, um, I think that riding in Zwift doesn't really impact bike handling skills that much. not at least as much as it's theorized to be. For example, myself, I can take as an example. For a considerable amount of time this year, I haven't stepped out to ride in to ride with other people in groups. I was doing a lot of riding and racing indoors on Zwift, but today there was a an event where it was kind of a timed event, mass. It was a mass start race, which is a seeding event for another bigger event next year. And I had to, well, I did most of the ride by myself, but then in the last 20 minutes, there's a bunch of guys who bridged up to me, and then we became a group and we started taking turns at the front, peeling off, things like that. But then I found out that, or I discovered that I hadn't lost so much in my bike handling ability. I mean, when I was behind the rider, I was still very cognizant of where the wind was coming from, which direction it was hitting me from, and I was consciously moving um to the um, to the shaded region, where the wind wasn't a lot. So, in other words, forming an echelon. I was very conscious of which direction I should be relative to the rider in front of me. I was also very cognizant of the rider's back wheel against my front wheel and the distance. Um, and I was also cognizant of the distance itself, right? I mean, I had both my fingers on the brakes while I was on the drops. So it didn't really take away a lot. Um, but then I guess the experience is different for different people. But I would say that someone who has a lot of muscle memory and a lot of practice from earlier years, they don't lose a lot uh, by supplementing some of their training with Swift. Um, that said, I do have to talk a little about one of the initiatives undertaken by a couple of chaps from the Indian racing scene, Zwift racing scene. One chap by the name of um, Rajendra Kumar, and his compatriot in Canada, Mayank. They have started what might be the first Indian um, Rajendra Bhaskar. They have started what's the first Indian e-racing team, ISRT. So Rajendra is a very accomplished time trialist. He's a very good cyclist as well. The Indian e-sport racing team ISRT is actually a platform and is welcoming all kinds of riders of all abilities to form a team, just like other racing teams. Um, so it's nice to go to Zwift Power actually and see what other racing teams are out there. So if you go here on Zwift Power and click on rankings under teams, you can see all the teams that are highly ranked within overall and also within the specific categories. So, for example, in the C category, you can see that Just for Glory is really up there. There's Team TFC, Herd, Dirt, etc. You can also drill down rankings by, I believe, country, and you will start seeing, yeah, you will start seeing a list of countries, and you can drill down by specific country, and you can see that with um, with India, so a number of these top racers are in the ISRT, which is the Indian e-racing team. So again, this is it just started by these two individuals, and they also have started a Discord channel. Now, for starters, Discord is a service which can be used by gamers to communicate with each other either by text or um, audio by headphones. Think of it as your WhatsApp um, for gamers, really. Um, but you can do real-time audio chatting. No video chats. I don't think video chats are allowed, but you can do audio chatting. And the nice thing about it is, while you're racing in real time, you can have all of your teammates in the same audio channel and communicate to each other. So it gives a different element, a new element to racing. It adds a new element whereby you can strategize and change team tactics on the fly, depending on the race situation, and have it, communicate to everyone on the team so everyone knows. The other nice thing about Discord is if you're in a team time trial situation, you can have the non-participating rider watch you, technically watch you as a director sportif, a virtual director sportif in a virtual team car, and they can then spell out the pulling orders, call out people's names, how long they have to go, and so it really brings a very controlled racing situation, and it kind of helps everyone out set really fast times. Um, I think that's a great element to have, which is really absent from amateur racing. Most of us do not have the luxury of having a race radio hooked to ourselves, nor the luxury of having someone tell us how the race is happening in real time for us to change the way we race. So I think that that aspect is really good for Zwift racing. And then so ISRT, they've started a Discord channel to bring together these people under Discord. So you can click on the link and then sign up to Discord and be welcome there, and then you can know how to sign on to some of these events and take part. So that's really nice that they've done that. By the way, tomorrow is the first um, Indian esport racing event. It's actually a 100-kilometer time trial. So they are putting this out there as their first event. It's a pretty long event, I would say, for a start, but it really favors the people who have got some time and who like to race on the flats. So this one is on Tempest Fugit, and it's pretty flat. There is no inclines, and so it really if you're someone who likes steady power, putting steady power for long duration, like maybe a triathlete or someone going against the clock for long duration, then this is it really it's really something for you. So do show your support for these guys. Without Obviously, without interest from the Indian community, they can't grow. So they're really putting themselves out there, and one of their missions is to educate and inform, create awareness about how to use Zwift in the right way for racing. For some of you who have no idea and who are kind of stuck, especially about equipment to use and how to get the most out of your racing, and then these guys are ready to help. So that resource is there. They are on Facebook, by the way. You can just search them, Indian Esport Racing Team. So I think having said all that, there's really little to cover. I think one aspect I would like to um, highlight, especially for coaches, for remote coaches, yeah, people who are overseeing or supervising athletes in a remote fashion, um, sitting in one part of the world while the athlete is in another part of the world. It's really challenging in the traditional sense, even to communicate with athletes. Um, you don't have the luxury of giving them a call, or verbally encouraging them, or talking to them. Yeah, you can use WhatsApp, but then when they are really training and doing some of the programs that you've given them, are you able to for example, ride with them, relative to a situation where the coach may be living in your neighborhood and he might be able to ride with you on a particular day? With remote coaching, it's really a challenge. Well, Zwift gives you the ability to actually narrow that separation down. So I'll give you an example where um, I did this with some of my team members earlier this year. I made a little video of it on Instagram. Basically, I was thinking of a way to standardize testing, critical power testing for cyclists, and I figured, hey, what better way than administer it over Zwift, right? So Zwift allows you as a coach to share a custom workout, which is built by using a workout builder. Many workout builders are there available online. Zwift, in fact, has its own native workout builder. So you could make a workout and then share it as a .zwo file, and then that athlete can take that file, that you've emailed them or WhatsApp them, and drop it into their Zwift workout folder. And then they can execute that workout from within their Zwift environment. Now, the nice thing about this is that you can do a given test, like a critical power test or an FTP test, whatever, on the same course any day, every day. And so you can have very realistic and highly controlled environment to make tests. And so it's a really standardized way to do tests. The nice the really nice thing about this is that when the athlete is doing the test, right, you can actually log into Zwift as well if you're a subscriber on Zwift, and you can watch them as they're performing the test. And if you both have some way to communicate, for example, if you have Discord, then you both can be in the same channel and you can sit and watch them do the test, and you can verbally encourage that rider to try and get some more performance out of them in a certain interval, for example. And that really helps. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Verbal encouragement really helps with positive psychology when you're trying to do stuff like maximal exertion tests, which the critical power test demands. um, so there's a little video on that which I made. um, so this is really there. I mean, it's under our team name, Right Shape Performance. If you drill down to the set of videos, I've made a video giving you a little overview on how we did that. So these are some of the things that Zwift allows you to do, which previously wasn't possible, or was really challenging. So you know Zwift is not all that bad. It takes away some elements, but also offers you some elements. So in the end, you might argue that it's all uh, it all kinds of evens out. So it's a really nice thing that way. Of course, let's keep in mind that if you're a team, and also if you're a team that's kind of geographically um, separated, then Zwift allows you all to come together virtually and ride and do team rides and things like that, which is indispensable for team building. Absolutely indispensable. Um, I think this kind of team aspect to that racing really builds the team building. You learn a lot from being involved in teams versus in real life. It's not hard. It's not easy to get into teams, yeah, unless you have like a local sponsor and they have a team. And even then, despite having teams, it might be really hard to get on a team simply because you don't have the performance to show them. And they might be recruiting really high level riders. With Zwift, you have so many teams. You can join pretty much any team. You can contact the principals of the team, and they'll tell you how to join, and you can get on their Discord channel and take part with them in events, which is what I'm doing. Um, I'm part of the Dirt um, team. You can see I'm number 12 in among the Indian ranked riders at the moment, and I'm part of the Dirt team, which is short form for Dad's Indoor Riding Trainers, which I really like. I like the whole concept of Dirt, and we are on Discord. So, for example, I'll just quickly show you the Dirt Discord feature. So this is Discord, which is a separate software, and I am gonna open this up, and it will show me all the things that I have on Discord, all the different channels. But Dirt is one of them, and that's Dirt. So within Discord, you can see that there's a number of different things where different topics are discussed. There are channels for talking anything about cycling, channels specifically for equipment, channels specifically for nutrition and training, and then there are many sub teams within Dirt. So because Dirt has such a big membership, they have multiple sub teams under the Zwift banner, under the Dirt banner. Sorry. So you're gonna go be part of a sub team, and you might be either a rider for them, or if someone thinks that you have the capability, you can captain those teams. And so it gives you a lot of leadership lessons as well, where you're having to now captain a set of riders, which is what I'm doing. I'm actually part of Zwift, Dirty Rascals. This was a team that's formed in 2017 by a couple of guys as part of the Dirt group, and I'm commandeering the ambush team. We are a C level team participating in the Zwift Racing League, and I have about 6 riders that I'm overseeing, and I was responsible for selecting these 6 riders for the Zwift Racing League. We've completed about 7 races now, and we are second overall among all the teams that are participating in the event. So, my responsibilities include communicating on a weekly basis about how to sign up for the event, and we discuss what the race is, what the course is, and stuff. And then I also hold recons with my riders. So we go and check out the course, and we do workouts to enhance our ability to perform. Um, and then if there are any disputes, then the captain has to take it up with the race organization. So really gives you a lot of leadership skills, which again, not easy to do in an indoors outdoor setting. um, Most of the time you're never really doing any leadership in teams. You're just sitting there, or you're not in a team at all. So it gives you, a really different environment to learn a lot of soft skills, which I think a lot of people are not discussing. But hopefully through this video, I was able to show you those things. Um, that's really helping me, at least, and really helping me to enjoy the this type of environment. And I think some of you will too. If you like ISRT, join them, and have a look at all the things on offer that you probably didn't experience before. Um, so that's really the end of it all. I think I've covered a lot of the topics. I covered the generalities of Zwift rule books, um, the ISRT guys, what they're doing. I discussed in real life versus virtual riding, and some of the differences, how important cooling is. And then I've discussed the Zwift Power uh, platform, which is this lovely data repository, and you can argue it's as good as maybe um, being a subscriber on Strava, for example. In fact, it gives you as much data, or probably even more, under your fingertips to monitor your own progress and your team's performance as well. And you can also look up who you're competing with, which is incredible, because in the real life setting you can never do that. You never really know with 100% certainty what another racer, what your competitor is capable of. So you always go into a race with like a question mark. But in the virtual environment of Zwift, everyone's power is on the telemetry, and with Zwift Power you can see what performances they put out in a past event. So you can really prepare yourself in that way. So it's a really nice environment that way. And yeah, finally I talked about some of the features that Zwift offers, which are maybe useful for coaches. um, I do have to say that with Zwift, because there are so many events, it's very easy to sign on the events. So one of the things we were discussing today is this propensity for people to forget recoveries and get sidetracked and really keep pushing themselves all the time, which it's really easy to do on Zwift, considering the amount of races on here and the ease with which you can sign up, because it's all free. Well, you are paying for Zwift, but then the events are free. um, so you just got to watch out for the overtraining syndrome. Certainly, if you're doing a lot of races, then one of the things that I've experienced myself is, because you're doing so much high intensity all the time, it could affect your sleep and your sleeping patterns. So the moment you notice that your sleep is being disrupted, or your heart rates are always very high, or you're sweating and getting fatigued and things like that very easily, you know that some of the signs of overtraining, and you want to cut back. Again, this is not just like real outdoor riding. If you push yourselves outdoor too much, you're going to overtrain, and this is no different. you do need those recovery rides and those easy rides to supplement your hard rides. Really, I wouldn't push myself more than twice in a week, considering that Zwift races are very intense. So that's what I do at least now. Is I limit myself to about two races, two hard races, in a week, and that's it. Whereas previously, I was so excited with this new platform, I was just racing pretty much every day or every second day, and that's okay. If you take it wisely, you can push in some races, and in the other races you can just sit on someone's wheel and make it like a fast group ride, for example. So racing, every day doesn't have to always be very strenuous. You can kind of uh, fluctuate your output and keep your perceived exertion where you need it to be. But there are some individuals who want to keep pushing, pushing, pushing all the time, and it's easy to do that because of the social aspects. You're competing with people whom you can see, and you're competing with people whose powers you can see. So it's really easy to for you to chase them down. And so there are those kind of people out there uh, who wants to be at their limit every day, and it's not easy to do that. And I think there's more uh, ill effects to be had from being in that mode. So just watch out for that. Okay, having said all that, that's all for this open source learning session. I hope that you have learned a lot, but I also hope that this brings out additional questions that that you want answered. And so definitely I would ask you to try and reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with some of the other guys with ISRT. Also, reach out to the ISRT guys on Facebook, and alternatively, you can leave your questions, comments below this video. Thanks, everyone.